so-called Islamophobic side, but the anti-Semitic side, and I will respectfully disagree with the person who came before me, because I don't think the parallels between the hostility towards Muslims and Jews, I don't think the parallels are exact. First of all, I don't see any evidence whatsoever, none, that there has been a rise of anti-Semitism in Europe. That is simply, in my opinion, having studied the topic, that is simply false. There is no increase in anti-Semitism in the UK. There is no increase in anti-Semitism in Germany. There is no increase in anti-Semitism in France, the three major cases that are often cited. It's simply untrue. There is what's called a rise in incidence of anti-Semitism, but that's often the case, for example, in the United Kingdom, because reporting of incidents has been more exact in recent years than in the past. So in past years, there were incidents, but people didn't go to the police about it. Now, they will go to the police to report the incident that in the past they would have just ignored. Or there will be new efforts by Jewish organizations to report incidents that in the past they didn't make. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the actual serious investigations, anti-Semitism in the UK, for example, what you would call an anti-Semite person who just hates Jews, it's about 4, 5, 6% of British population. Now, there's an obvious question, and the question is, if what I'm saying is true, if it's true, why is now this whole hysteria about a rise in anti-Semitism? If it's not increased, why is there a hysteria about it? And there are two parts to the answer. One part is that historically, beginning in the 1970s, whenever Israel came under criticism, in order to limit the attacks on Israel, Jewish organizations would claim there's a rise in anti-Semitism, and that's why Israel is being criticized. So anybody who criticized Israel would be accused of anti-Semitism. And if you look at the record, I've studied it pretty closely, every time Israel had a public relations problem, namely it was committing atrocities and crimes which were not easy to excuse, then they would claim that there's a rise of anti-Semitism when people criticized Israeli criminal behavior. So, part of the reason why Israel is being, part of the reason why there's a claim of a new anti-Semitism again, it's because Israel has come under a lot of criticism in recent years. First, because of its attack on Gaza in 2008-9, what was called Operation Cast Lead. Then another attack on Gaza in 2014, Operation Protective Edge. And then, most recently, the brutal Israeli repression of the Great March of Return. That's part of the explanation. The other part is actually more interesting, because the other part is that leftist parties have emerged in parts of the Western world. For example, in the UK, under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, and in the United States, under the leadership of Bernie Sanders. And leftist parties and leftist individuals have tended to be sympathetic to the Palestinians and critical of Israel. And so now, it's not only defenders of Israel who are claiming these leftist parties are anti-Semitic. It's now the whole ruling establishment in the UK and the US who are using the claim of anti-Semitism to try to stop these leftist movements from coming into power. But not because they care about Jews, not because they care about Israel, but because they care about their wealth, their power, their money. So they're using the claim of Jeremy Corbyn being an anti-Semite, people like Ilhan Omar in the United States claiming she's an anti-Semite, to try to stop these leftist movements from coming into power, but not because they care about Israel, not because they care about Jews, but because they care about their power and they care about their wealth. So they want to stop Jeremy Corbyn, not because he's sympathetic to Palestinians, not because he's sympathetic to Muslims. They want to stop Jeremy Corbyn because he's a person of the left. He wants to redistribute wealth. And it's the same thing with Bernie Sanders in the United States. So now we have a unique phenomenon. We have both Jewish power, which is real. Jews are very wealthy, very well connected, very well organized. You have now Jewish power united with all of elite power. If you look in the UK, for example, from the Guardian newspaper, which some of you will know to be allegedly a leftist newspaper, from the Guardian newspaper to the far right, the tabloids like the Daily Mail, from all the way across, from the BBC to Sky News, the whole spectrum, they're all shouting, Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite. They don't care about Jews. They don't care about Israel. They care about power, and they care about privilege. They want to preserve their power, preserve their privilege, and they use the claim of anti-Semitism to try to stop Jeremy Corbyn from getting into power. And they will do the same thing. It's only a matter of time. It's already started by attacking people like Ilhan Omar, but it's only a matter of time before they will be attacking Bernie Sanders using the same tactics as they use against Jeremy Corbyn in order to stop not the pro-Palestinian, pro-Muslim factions from getting power, but to stop people who, as somebody said, few people mentioned to me here, people who want to create a Denmark in the United States and a Denmark in the UK, a reasonably humane society which has significantly redistributed wealth. And the British and the American elite, they don't want that. So I think the attacks on Muslims are real, but the claims about rise in anti-Semitism, I don't believe they're real. Actually, most of the far right in Europe, they love Israel. They think Israel is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's an interesting question why they love Israel. And I found the most interesting the most interesting insight came from one of the world's leading historians on fascism. He's an Israeli. His name is Zev Sternheld, a very smart guy for sure. And he wanted to ponder that question. Why does the far right, which we associate with anti-Semitism, why does the far right all over Europe and around the world, people like Bolsonaro in Brazil loves Israel, why do they? They're supposed to be anti-Semites. And his answer was, and it's not a joke, his answer was, because the far right does not consider Israelis Jews. They see them as Israelis, these very militaristic, chauvinistic, racist people, white, like them. They don't see them as Jews. They see them more as kind of Nordic supermen, like themselves. And you can smile, but it's actually true. Israelis, I'm not saying this is a joke, Israelis are not Jewish. There is nothing about an Israeli that historically resembles a Jew. When we look at Israelis, we don't see Jews. If you look historically, a typical American Jew, no joke, is someone like Woody Allen. It's true. The horn-rimmed glasses, intellectual, artsy, or in the European context, a typical Jew is Franz Kafka. If you ever know the big ears, the gaunt face, that's a Jew. It's not Israelis. Israelis are not Jewish. Even American Jews. American Jews overwhelmingly vote Democratic. Democratic Party in the elections. Israelis, so a very good Israeli columnist, her name is Amira Haas, she recently said all Israelis are Republicans. Their whole mindset is like Trump. What European leader resembles Trump more than Netanyahu? These are not Jews. You may not like Obama. I didn't like Obama. But Obama, he doesn't present the image of somebody like Trump. It's just a totally different image he projects. Jews love Obama, in my opinion, for the wrong reasons, but they love Obama. Jews hate Trump. But Trump loves Netanyahu. Netanyahu loves Trump. It's true. But Jews hate Trump. So I think the historian was correct when he said the alt-right, what's called the ultra-right, they love Israel because when they see Israel, they don't see Jews. I'm much more typically Jewish than any Israeli. That's just a fact. So I would enter a disagreement on what